Hello everyone, hello folks, welcome ladies and gentlemen, one and all to Lightspeed Racing. Welcome back, whether you've joined us for our F1 series in the past or for our events such as Road to Grand Finals in courtesy with SimGrid at BCO. Tonight is the Twilight Cup and tonight is going to be another great night of racing. Unfortunately, we weren't able to stream the previous round out at Barcelona, but we'll be doing that race recap in just a few minutes to make sure that you're all caught up to speed with the championship, with the battles that are taking place up and down the field, and what we can expect as we head into Watkins Glen. I absolutely love this track. It's beautiful. It is going to be an intense fight up all around the circuit, and crucially, I believe the start-finish straight is going to see quite a lot of action. We're also going to see a little bit more coming through turn 4 before we get to a little bit of chicanery up at the top end of the circuit before we come back down. Much smoother, longer apexes through some of the corners, so it's all about judging your speed, judging your line, and getting yourself through the track. Very straight cut as far as circuits go. We've had some very curvy, very twisty circuits in prior seasons and even in prior rounds of the championship. I mean, Spa-Francorchamps, Barcelona, just to name a few. But you can see there's a lot of straight lines here, so lateral grip might not be as important. And with a lot of right angles on this track, short of a couple corners near the latter section of the track, it's all about getting the grip, getting the speed down in order to put yourself in prime position heading into the apexes. Key things to note in terms of the race runnings before we start talking about standings is that we have a 30-minute practice session which we'll pop our heads in for the last 5 minutes and get a little bit of a gauge as to where our drivers currently stand before we head into a 20-minute qualifying session and a 60-minute race. There is one mandatory pit stop as part of this race also, but it only has to be for fuel. You do not need to change your tyre compounds, simply just to refuel. And the amount of fuel is also not mandated, so you can really vary with the strategy. You can fuel up early and save time on the pit stop, but at the expense of on-track pace being a little bit lower due to increased weight, or you can try and run as lean as possible and run your fuel right till the very edge. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see how drivers are going to manage their strategies when it comes to pitting as we get into the race here. But looking at our standing, key standouts were, of course, in the Pro Division, we had Daniel Moffat, who, coming off of the first round in Spa, continued to dominate and continue to really put a brilliant performance down. You had Claudio Zaza, who also did a great job in their Ferrari 296, with Brian Anderson in the 3rd place position for the Pro Division. Into the Pro-Am Division, we then have Nick Rigazzoni taking our first spot alongside Richard Cook and Gary Barham in the P2 and P3 spots. And then heading into the Amateur Division and looking forward to the race. We have Gavin Sullivan in the Amateur Division dominating. We've certainly seen that Sullivan has been one of those drivers that we've had to keep an eye on, where they've just put in such a good performance and really punched above their weight in the amateur tier. So one driver we have to keep an eye on, and Scott Cameron with Dimitri Machine is going to be in P2 and P3. So with that all being said, these are your standings. That is, of course, your standings in the previous rounds. And you also need to look at where we come to now. So overall, looking at the wider standings of the season, we can say drivers are certainly amped up for this one. So first off, overall standings, Andrei Porshakov is going to be in the lead with 90 points, followed by Brian Anderson and Claudio Zaza. Then in the Pro-Am division, we have Craig Starkey leading by consistency with 90 points. Also, Adam Rios and Richard Cook taking P2 and P3. And then the Amateur division leads us in with Gavin Sullivan, Andrew Priadko, and Scott Cameron in those top 3 spots. If you want to check out the standings as well yourself, you can by all means head over to our SimGrid page, and that will allow you to check out all of the standings and see them updated in real time as the races continue. Also, don't forget to check out Discord and check out our Patreon if you enjoy what we do. But this is where we stand, folks, and this is where we head into Watkins Glen. So we're about to head into the race, or at least into the track, and we're going to see who is going to come out on top. But let us know in the chat who you've got your eye out for. Crucially, it is going to be and I'm just in fact getting a word from the race team that it is going to be 90 minutes. So apologies for the minor confusion. There is a 90-minute race, and we are in fact going to be having a full mandatory pit stop with fuel and tires. So that is certainly a development, folks. I literally just got the word from the team that that is going to be the case. There we are. That is where we stand, and that is where we stay. We're about to jump into it, folks. We're about to jump into Watkins Glen. Let's take a look at who we are up against and who is going to be our king of the Glen. This is Lightspeed Racing. And here we are. Everyone is out in the pits right now. So we have a few drivers, few key drivers who we are going to jump over to. So Robert Homer is out on track right now, and you can see on the timing tower and see that we have Claudio Zaza over half a second ahead in free practice. You see it's nice and dark, 18 degrees out on track, so we aren't seeing optimal conditions. The drivers are going to have to work their tyres a little bit harder here in the race. We can also get a little bit of a gauge as we have our final few minutes in FP. What the driving standards are to be expected, and the areas where drivers can maybe push. Big thing is you can use a little bit of the undulation of the track. You can use a little bit of the banking in order to carry some extra speed where you otherwise wouldn't be able to throughout some of these corners. Looking on board Robert Homer here. We've got a few more drivers who are getting their way out. So Nick Rigazzoni from LRT, and in the Pro-Am division is looking very quick in that 720S. And I really do love the glowing strips on the cars as well. Neat little visual detail so we can see who is where, who has got what position. But a few of them out on track right now, trying to find their footing. Only Audi on the field here. It is going to be James Payton. And they are going to be firmly representing. We've said before that the field is often dominated by McLarens and Ferraris. That doesn't seem to be holding as strongly, at least certainly not in the Ferrari's case, as it has in prior races. So we have got 8 McLarens out on the field. We have 6 Ferraris, but the spread was actually a lot higher than in previous rounds that we are seeing now. So maybe we're seeing a little bit of equilibration in terms of what car is particularly strong. Remember also that drivers are enabled to, if need be, for whatever reason, they did have an opportunity to swap their cars at the start of the season, But I guess there's also the opportunity that may have opened up. Looking around, we have two Porsches. That's going to be Krasnov and Robert Homer, as they are going to continue to lap around, just to continue to try and get some pace in. Regazzoni is going to go a little bit faster. He's going to get himself within 1.5 tenths of the lead time. And we have just a few seconds left of free practice before we get into quali here. Everyone's heading back into the pits now. They're getting themselves all geared and ready for the race ahead for quali, as free practice has officially ended and the checkered flag is falling. Qualifying is bound to start any minute now. John Gabbert is going to be the last one to head into the pits, and then it's just two drivers left on track. It's Nick Regazzoni, and that is going to be James Payton. And there you go. I think that's going to be Regazzoni's signal to head into the pits there. Yep, indeed. I think James Payton is just finishing their practice lap, and then they are also going to be coming in for quali to officially begin. Final corner now. Very wide. You can see just how close they get to that wall on turn 11. And here we are. Qualifying is officially now on. So folks, everyone is going to be rushing out on track and immediately trying to get their fastest time on the boards. This is it. This is it. And this is going to be some pretty intense racing ahead of us. So 20 minutes in qualifying. Of course, if you are going to be on your outlap, then blue flag rules generally apply. So do not impede. If you're on your lap, commit to that lap. And now we see what these drivers can come through and do. Zaza with a very interesting livery. Almost looks like an unpainted car in some sense, but you can see the subtle dotting around of the sponsor stickers. So minimalist style livery, and I am all for it personally. To go through the dead of night here in Watkins Glen. We're about to get this show on the road. I say, what a beautiful looking game at night. See this, the headlights casting deep into the landscape. And now we have Claudio Zaza about to start their lap. Let's see what they can do. They are going to be the first one to go for a full push. And they're going to be the first driver to set the benchmark here in this session. So turn 1. Nice and wide, get a little bit on the curbing, but you need to get as much of a wide line as possible. You need to carry the speed through this first sector. Turns 2 and 3 now. Looking very smooth indeed. Yeah, carry that speed through. You want to make sure you are really hammering it down the straight. Then heavy on the brakes. You've got the double chicane. Almost Lassard-esque. For a long right-hander, you keep it tight to the inside, you power through the banking, lean into the cambering of the car, and another one down the hill. So what goes up must come down. A little bit of a flash of the lights to say that's a signal that there is going to be a driver coming up behind you who is on a lap, so you need to get out of the way to prevent impedance. See that Ferrari coming down now. Down nice and deep before getting deep on the brakes. Getting into the dip of the corner. careful riding it back up the curbing and getting very close to the grass there, but just about keeping themselves out of trouble. Yeah, final couple of corners now for Claudio Zaza. It's looking like a very strong time as we come around the final corner on the inside curb, on the outside, inches away from that wall. It is going to be a 145.237. That is the benchmark. Cook is going to go 7.5 tenths slower. Anderson is going to be popping themselves up into that P2 spot. A few more drivers going to be coming through now. So that's Galamini is going to be coming in P5. Stuart Pryor is going to be coming in P3. We've got Craig Starkey coming in P6. Couple seconds behind on main runner with Paul Sims, 1.2 out of contention. Gavin Sullivan also going to be making their way. Scott Cameron, very good performer that we've seen in the amateur division, and is going to hold true to that with a 1.2 second deficit. That is still going to put them net P1 in their class and in going to be P6. So quite a few drivers out on the track who are really trying to put in that work as early as possible. Adam Rios now coming across the line. What are they going to be doing? It is going to be a 146.3, and that is going to be a P6. They're going to inherit it off of Scott Cameron, as that is Blanchette, I believe, coming through. Also in a McLaren 720S with James Payton coming through. Unfortunately not getting a lap on the boards. But Osintsev, who is another driver about to finish a run here. Let's see how they can carry the speed through the final corner, as we are looking nice and clean from all of the drivers so far. Looking like a very good run. So at this point you've got a few drivers who are coming in, so they're cool down laps. They're going to head back into the pits likely, or they might commit and go out again. So Rigazzoni is going to be going for another one because they have not got a valid lap. I imagine they overextended the track at points and the game stewarding system was not having any of it. Crazily enough, Zaza kept the pace up, kept the pace going. He's on a 144.6. So that is absolutely blistering pace from the Ferrari there. Anderson is going to also make a bit of a jump. Richard Cook is going to be coming up to P3. Paul Sims going to be coming into P3 and leapfrogging that Mercedes. You see, watch the timing tower in real time here. A few drivers all coming through. Rob Everett, Robert Homer. All of them making substantial improvements. Homer unfortunately doesn't improve, but Gregorelli is about to cross the line now. 148 to beat realistically. They need to get something on the boards, and that is not going to be materializing. Not today. Again, Adam Rios coming through now. And that is going to be a big jump. That is going to be up to P6 for the McLaren driver here. And Blanchette for Optima Motorsport is not going to be getting it. John Gabbert now. He's one of the drivers who needs to put time on the boards and needs to get something to show for his efforts. He is not going to do it yet, but we're going to stay on board with him. We're going to see if he's going to make a jump. He is in the amateur division and looking a little bit shaky through that first corner. It looked like the rear was bouncing quite a fair chunk. I'm not sure if they got overly aggressive across the curbs or if they maybe overdid it a bit just on the dampening of their setup. Again, yeah, coming to the inside looking very shaky, at least on the inside tire. The setup is not looking as planted as we've seen from some of the other drivers. Scott Cameron, another one to keep an eye on in that amateur division. Got a few coming through as Zaza and Anderson both head into the pits. Anderson has closed their gap once more, so they are now going to be at 144.5. We see a little bit of movement further up too. So let's jump ahead and let's see who we can watch come across. Robert Homer now makes a very small improvement. That's just going to be up to P15, a single place. Can Gregorelli do much better? They need to get a big jump here, and there is going to be a jump again. Only a single position for the McLaren driver. So Adam Rios, can they also get an improvement? They are not. James Payton, the only Audi on the field. We're coming up to the halfway point of qualifying here, folks. And that is going to be, yes, a very big jump. That is going to be up from P13 to P6. So good going there for the Audi. John Gabbett is going to get a time on the board finally, and it is going to be a 1:48.3, but that is enough for P19 and enough for a good little redemption. Assist Seb coming through now, and not an improvement. Andrew Prieko is going to be the last driver to get a time. And hopefully they've kept it clean up to this point, because they need to just have something on the boards by this stage. They are not going to have a time on the boards yet, but let's stick with them as we watch what they can do. A little bit of rear shake. Immediately noticing that compared to someone like Zaza, they're not really optimizing their lines. They're not taking the inside as deep as they should. They're not getting that tight line to the apex. So heavy on the brakes, so they have got the chicane, but they are sliding. Looking very loose on the rear, that Mercedes. One of two on the field. It used to be just Richard Cook. Yeah, that GT3, that AMG, is looking quite loose in terms of the rear. I wonder how much Prieko's going to fight. You see a big amount of sparks kicking up from just skirting the car on the curbs there. Scraping the carbon, the undertray and the diffuser. Trying to absolutely rocket the car down the hill now. Much better line through the second sector. Sector now a little bit wide there, so just missing the apex. And this is the crucial thing. This is where they're losing the time. It's not even necessarily through throttle application or turn in. It's just, as you can see, go massively wide there. It's just the lines. It's all in the lines, the setup of your car. Because once you are committed to a corner, you cannot change your trajectory. Cannot change it on a whim. You are committed to that line. So even if it is a 46.5, that is going to be invalid, and Prieko's going to have to go out once again. He's got a few drivers, namely Starkey, going to be coming through and starting a lap, I believe, now as well. A few more are also on their ways around the circuit. In the camera, in the cockpit. Just biding his time. Notice the gentle application of the throttle. Just lets off a little bit to try and aid the car with its rotation. Can't be overly aggressive. It's not a binary thing, having the throttle. It's not a binary thing. It is not on or off. You can have a little bit of throttle to work the dips, get your car rotated, but not too much where it overpowers it and coasts into either over or understeer. Good work avoiding the grass there for Craig Starkey. Setting that Ferrari, very used to him back from the Twilight Cup. Used to seeing him in an Aston Martin. Of course, in the Ferrari for this season. But it is a little bit of an adjustment. We're looking very promising here from Starkey to come through the final couple of corners in that Ferrari. He's got his classic 3 white stripes, as every one of his liveries tends to do. Coming across the line now, is he going to make it a single-digit time? No, he is not. It's going to be behind, unfortunately. And a few more drivers are going to be coming through as well to see about them getting potential improvements. Stuart Pryor has been kind of a dark horse in this whole ordeal, as they carry a lot of speed through turn 10 and into turn 11. Running the Lamborghini, only one of two alongside Paul Sims to be doing so. So can they be putting Italian prowess to good use? They are a 10th down from their previous lap, from their best lap, I should say. We should see a little bit of improvement coming from that car in due time. few more cars coming through now. You've got Regazzoni is going to be coming through next. Is going to be jumping up to P7. Blanchette not going to be making an improvement. Paul Sims is going to be another who's coming across the line now. Is going to improve. No, but he is going to be starting his lap. So let's stay on board with him here. Zaza's going to be in a 44.315. That is the time to beat, with Anderson a quarter of a second behind. And everyone else seems to be very far off the pace. A little bit of neon purple lighting in the Huracan here. Very interesting choice. Oh, you see there, a little bit of understeer coming from the Lamborghini in the second set of apexes through the chicane. It really did look like he compromised his line there. Priatko is going to be getting a time on the boards, and what time it is. Number one driver, number one in the amateur class. 1.2 seconds behind, but that is P10 on track. P1 in amateur. So another case of a driver who's really punching above their weight. Remember Paul Sims now. A driver that we'd love to keep an eye on. He's got a little bit of a penchant for maybe struggling at points during the race, but then finding pace and making up several positions. So do not put anything past this driver. They definitely have pace on tap, and they're not afraid to show you. They should be showing that in quali here. That is for sure. As we come through the final couple of corners, P5. So it is going to be a couple of seconds, and then we will see, has he made an improvement. He's going to be demoted into P6 as Regazzoni is going to get another lap and promote themselves up higher. And Paul Sims is a 1:47.3, so that is not going to be him walking away with a fresh time. And a few more cars are going to be coming around the field. So Claudio Zaza is going to be coming through. Current pole sitter here in qualifying. Yellow briefly coming out there. Current pole sitter, Zaza Racing. And that is going to be a 2:09. So this is, I believe, a setup lap for what could be a new pole. Let's stick on board with them now. And especially if we keep the frame of reference from the prior amateur lap we watched, you can see immediately the smoothness of the input. The lines coming through that first sector. Night and day difference in terms of how tight they're keeping it and how much speed they're carrying through as a result. Through the two chicanes now. A lot more speed because they nailed the curbs and managed to get the weight transfer coming through. Second sector now, a little bit wide to get right the banking. Just push to keep it tight. A little bit of let up in the center of the corner. But then you power out to the exit, ready for the uphill right-hander. 180 degrees, very long corner. One that is crucial to get the exit on. It looks like this is going to be an abandon from Zaza because they're going to be focusing on doing a little bit of weaving to warm their tires ahead of the next run. So let's see who else we can take a look at. It's going to be Brian Anderson literally right behind them also in the Ferrari 296 GT3 car. So you can see right there, that is Zaza letting off, I believe, to either let Anderson go for a lap or to acknowledge that Anderson is on a lap where Zaza has abandoned. Final corner. Is it going to be a corker? It is going to be a good run, but not an improvement. That is 210 milliseconds down. And they need to be making up 257. So we're going to stick on board with them for the time being. We have 2 minutes and 25 seconds left in qualifying and counting. So if drivers want to get a good run out, it's basically now or never. This is your shot to do it. And as we stick on board with the helicopter, you can see just a little bit of sense of scale for how much speed these drivers are carrying and how aggressive they are going on some areas of this track. So far looking very smooth, the orange Ferrari. Yes, side note for those in the chat. What colour should a Ferrari be? Because I've seen blue Ferraris, I've seen yellow Ferraris, I've seen red Ferraris. But we've seen an orange Ferrari out on track here. We've seen a white Ferrari. And I do have to say, white is a very nice colour, especially if you've seen on cars like the Ferrari Roma. What a beautiful automotive machine. So, what the most exotic colour that you've seen on a car is another thing that I would love to know. Here we are. Final couple of corners here coming from Brian Anderson. Twilight LBA. And a few drivers who are in the pits, I believe, deciding that, yep, they're not going to be getting another run. They are happy with their qualifying position, but we've got a few of them who are still going to push. Brian Anderson is going to improve, but it's going to be 35 milliseconds away from any other driver. Zaza is going to make yet another improvement. That is another 10th on his previous. Ryan Blanchette is going to be coming across, not going to be getting an improvement for themselves here either. They are going to be staying in P18. But these top two drivers, they seem to be just in a league of their own right now. They are almost half a second clear of P3 and onwards. They seem to be in a tussle of their own. Fabio Gallimini is going to be making an improvement. It's only one position, but that might just be enough. They pipped Priadko by 7 milliseconds. And as we see, Robert Everett next to come across the line. That is going to be a tough push for them. Are they going to get an improvement? No, they are not, unfortunately. So all eyes on the last few drivers as the flag has fallen. So now anyone coming across the line from this point or anyone in the pits is out of qualifying. They have completed their runs. And this is the final shot. So Andrew Priadko across the line. Fastest in the amateur division. Is that an improvement? Yes, it is an improvement. Wow, 145 flat. They are going to be nestling themselves very comfortably between the pros and the pro-ams. Paul Sims is also going to be making an improvement on exact parity in P6. Identical time to Priadko. Regazzoni is going to be pushing themselves up into P3 as well. So they are going to be making themselves very happy. Rios is going to be up in P9. A few more drivers going to be coming through here. That's going to be Brian Anderson. And Brian Anderson is going to leapfrog into pole position at the end of quali here. Can Zaza make a challenge to that? Ryan Blanchette coming across the line now. Are they going to be making an improvement? Yes, they are. That's going to be up in P15. So a few more drivers yet to get a run in properly. Zaza is in the pits. Brian Anderson is going to be, unless Everett is going to pull out a sudden masterclass, I think that might be it. And that is it, folks. That is your quali session. And you can see that Brian Anderson is going to be taking it with a 144.145. At the very end, they're just going to be pipping Claudio Zaza with 57 milliseconds. P3 is going to be the start of the Pro-Am drivers. And leading the Pro-Am class is going to be Nick Regazzoni in the McLaren 720S. Richard Cook is going to be P2 in that field, just under a 10th behind in that Mercedes AMG. Priadko is a big standout, however. They've got exact parity with Paul Sims, a driver that we have known to have really good one-lap pace or two-lap pace. And around Watkins Glen, it seems like this amateur driver could be up for really making some waves here in the Twilight Cup. Looking around the rest of the field, you can see, of course, the standings are on the screen. We have 21 drivers, and before long, we are going to be seeing, as we head into the full table, you can see that Anderson absolutely nailed the second sector of the course. Zaza had a really good sector 3, and Priadko with the best sector 1 overall. So theoretical best, you're looking at a 144 flat is your theoretical best time, if not a 143.9. So that is your ideal times, and this is where everyone now is going to be waiting, and everyone is going to be setting themselves up, making sure they're fully locked in, ready for the race. So just a moment now, folks, and then we will be getting into things. But a great job from everyone who put in some really solid times, especially the fight between Anderson and Zaza. I believe these two are going to be fighting tooth and nail throughout the entire race. It is a 90-minute race. Fuel and tyres are required, remember. So that is a last-minute change that came in. And you can see everyone has got the mandatory allocation, the little 1 next to their name. So we'll be able to keep track of who's made their stops and start to get a little bit of insights into their strategy as the race continues. But let us know who you're supporting in the chat as well. And if you do enjoy the kind of things that we put on, then you need to be getting in on our Discord. You need to be checking out some of our other events. So it's not just this. We also have offerings for F1 and iRacing. And if you want to support the kind of work that we put in here, of course, head over to our Patreon, where you can get exclusive perks and bonuses alongside making sure that we can continue to do the things that we do.
30 seconds.
So 30 seconds until the race is due to start. I gotta say, these races are getting pretty long. They've come a long way from the 45 minutes of the Twilight Cup. We have doubled that race length, including a pit stop. So it's going to be a long, hard-fought night of racing. This is one of attrition as well as of pace. We can see who's going to come out on top. The session is about to start, and we'll be on board with Anderson for the formation lap. So yeah, this session is officially underway now, and drivers are going to be peeling out. It is only 16 degrees out on track. So drivers will, of course, have had to account for that in their car setups, knowing that the surface temps are going to be a lot lower, but otherwise, the track is looking optimal. Doesn't look like there's any rain set to come through the night. And it doesn't look like there's any crosswinds either to tamper with the car's very sensitive aerodynamics. As we switch to the heli cam here, just to get a little bit of a sense of scale before we jump into the race. This is all about setting yourself up for success. You see a few of the drivers behind. They're going to be weaving. So Regazzoni is going to be weaving to try and make sure his tyres are optimally heated. They're at the perfect temperature. And that from the quali session, he might even be able to pick up or clear some of the marbles that might have happened to place themselves in inopportune places on track. So keep to the racing line. You might want to pick up marbles, but you don't want to pick up any dirt. Regazzoni getting a little bit close to the back of Zaza there. Gabbert, interestingly, is back down in the pits. So I'm not really sure what their game plan is here. Either way, they are going to be seen to be at the very back. And I wonder if they are going to be starting in the pit lane as opposed to joining the rest of the drivers for the procession. Remember, folks, we have 3 classes in this race. So anyone with a white name is designated as pro. They are your fastest drivers here in the session and expect to be at the top end of the fields. Then you have grey names, which are pro-am. They are right about the middle, so you can expect some tussle in the mid-pack for that. And then you have the red names, which are for the amateur class, the lowest of our 3 tiers. And we will see, well, some occasional punching up, as we can see with Bradco. You will typically see them in the likes of the bottom third of the grid. And especially as the race continues, we will see where this goes. As we are coming through to the final third of the track, drivers are going to be starting to slow down and get themselves lined up in double file. You can see Zaza's already preparing himself for that. come to the final couple of corners. They need to be in double file alongside each other, ready for race start. But Zaza seems to be getting a little bit of a jump, or at least trying to. Anderson's sitting there thinking, no, hang on. I am the race leader here, remember? Come back here. This is it. This is Twilight Season 2 at Watkins Glen, folks. This is going to be an electrifying race into the night, into the darkness. It's time to get going with round 3. It's time to see what these drivers can do. Coming up to the line. Any minute now, we're going to get that green call. And that is green. We're away, folks. It's time for some racing. And let's see what these drivers can do. Picking up the pace immediately. We can see just a bit further back. A big front in terms of battling, as the mid-pack is going to be going absolutely wild. That is going to be Adam Rios, going to be pushing himself up into P8. You've got Starkey, who's pushed themselves up as well. He's down in P9, in fact. Few drivers here are going to be quickly, and oh, that is big contact. That is going to be a big spinner. That's a massive crash at the back end of the field. That is absolutely going to be a yellow. That is Cameron, Gregorelli, Sullivan, and Joe Gabber all caught up in a massive altercation. Yellow is out. Yellow is being waved, and Gavin Sullivan somehow is going to be on the top of the timing ball for some reason. But yeah, that is Zaza who's going to be taking the lead of the race off of Anderson. And now everyone is going to be jumping out of the way. We've got even a few more drivers who are losing control. Yeah, eyes on the prize and eyes on these top runners. The timing tower taking a little bit more time to catch up. We're on board with James Payton now, as they are lying in patient wait to see what they can do. They got a tale of 2 races here, because they have both got Priadko behind and they have got up ahead. They're trying to catch up to the likes of Paul Sims. Priadko is going to be potentially teeing themselves up for a move, and they are getting very close in terms of proximity. Quite a bit of extent on turn 10, just coming through and across the curb. Just maximising the speed, seeing whatever you can get out of that corner, you can carry through into the final start-finish straight segment. Potentially tee yourself up and move into turn 1. Doesn't look like anything is going to be materialising for the time being here, but what we do know is that a few drivers have profited massively from the altercation that occurred early in the race. And I'm sure while we don't unfortunately have live stewarding tonight, we will be for sure seeing that stewarding is going to come into heavy force post-race. What this has meant is that for Zaza and Anderson, they have had a chance to run away. They are completely unencumbered by the rest of the field, and they have a chance to simply fight themselves into the sunset. So we're on Priadko now, as the amateur with a dream, up in P8 right now, very close to the back of James Payton. They are a driver that we are certainly going to keep a very sharp eye on as this race progresses. Bit of a wider line and very aggressive to the curb there. Even taking a little bit of grass and kicking up a bit of dust. That could see a little bit of dirt on their tyres, which might be an issue for them. And in fact, you can see they have lost a good chunk of time to the Audi up ahead. Not an ideal position for them here. Greg Starkey kind of caught in the middle of everything. He's down in P6 because Paul Sims has made a move up on him for the P5 spot. So this is where we see about Sims, as I've said before, about having the pace, having the wherewithal to push upwards and continue to grab time, crucial time. And where you see just a bit further back, a few drivers are trying to break the slipstream. Looks like the field is starting to spread itself out a little bit now. We have maybe a fight that's starting to brew between Rios and Krasnov, but Krasnov is looking very comfortable where they currently stand. And you've got a few timing tower issues, but looking like a few battles that could be taking place very shortly, especially in the mid-pack. I want to keep a very keen eye on the mid-pack then. Oh, Adam Rios looking very unsettled coming over the curb there. Looking rather unsettled in that McLaren. Very odd that the highest McLaren on the board is only in P4, where the top two have been absolutely dominated by Ferraris, and a P3 goes to a Porsche, which is not something that we have seen. We haven't seen a Porsche really perform that highly. It has been, as aforementioned, usually Ferraris and McLarens. So to see that 911 where it is a great sight. The top two have very much gotten away with it. A few more drivers are going to be peeling through now. James Payton, in fact, has lost the position to Priadko as we come across the start-finish line to start ourselves on lap 4. Again. Might have a little bit of a microphone issue. My apologies, folks. Looking a bit further up, we could have Paul Sims potentially making a move on Rios here. Remember, they are different classes, so while they don't necessarily want to fight because they're not going to affect each other's final race stats, having him out of the way means that Paul Sims would have a clear run to his actual rivals, the former Krasnov, Anderson and Zaza. He's very quickly closed up that gap. It's just down to a couple of tenths now, and depending on how he plays this, although he has lost a little bit of time in the second sector, potentially with how he approaches sector 3, we could see an overtake for him here. Priadko really is making up a lot of time. They're on the back of Starkey. They're going to be coming up very close. And oh, big snap on the rear there for that Mercedes. You just saw it out of shot. We're sticking on board with Sims for the moment. Just out of shot. Priadko taking a bit more grass and will be picking up a bit of dirt on their tyres that they do not need. Looks like we have seen, and just to see the timing tower update, unfortunately due to what occurred, we will be seeing a lot of drivers bowing out here. Paul Sims is going to be making the move on Adam Rios, but we are down to 18 drivers. So Galamini is going to be out. We have Osinsev, who is down at the very bottom of the order. And then we can also, if we wanted to check on the timing tower. Oh, doesn't look like they show on the timing tower, unfortunately. We were hoping to see if we had a record of DNFs. Here we have 3 drivers who are going to be bowing out from this race, owing to the early incident. So we also see that Gavin Sullivan, another very strong amateur driver, is one that we are not going to see make it to the end, which is very unfortunate as well. The amateur drivers side, looks like Priadko is mounting the pressure on Craig Starkey. Now remember, They are P1 in their class. They do not necessarily need to fight, but they're going to go for it anyway. They are a racing driver. It's down the inside of the first corner in Watkins, and they are going to be absolutely nailing that apex, making full use of the space in order to get themselves up into P6. So I wonder, are they going to settle in to the race, or are they going to be chasing down Rios? This amateur driver is absolutely blazing through the field right now. So this is one that we will be watching with great interest. I assure you that you're watching your career with great interest. And one we also watch with great interest is Nick Rigazzoni, because he was also caught up in a lot of the chaos and is down in P15. So the pit window has officially been opened, so 10 minutes from the start and 10 minutes from the end. In between that time, you can go into the pit at any point and take your mandatory stop. Fuel and tyres required. And take your stop anywhere in those 70 minutes. But it is extremely rare to see drivers pit this early. And given that we will also need tyres, drivers are going to look to pit around the 50 to 45 minute mark, just to ensure that they have the optimal pace, the optimal amount of time spent on prime tyre life with the maximum amount of grip. And while these are hard wearing, they are endurance tyres, they still do fall off and they still do have a limited shelf life before they start to lose grip and fall away. Not to the extent of, say, Formula 1, but still, these tyres do have a lot of work that they put in over the course of the lap. As we can see here, Nick Rigazzoni is going to be making his way round and is going to be, even if it is not full position, he's going to be giving a good fight on the track to James Payton, and we've proved that he has got the pace, even if he's not where he wants to be right now. The blue flags are being waved, but it looks like Rigazzoni is actually faster. He's pulling away from Payton. And blue flags only need apply if you have a car in the blue or in a faster situation who is actually catching. So depending on your interpretation of the rules there, obviously dictates how you respond. Could see a little bit of also movement from Robert Homer, where they have dropped some pace to Blanchette. My eyes are on the middle top of the field, and specifically at Craig Starkey, because Starkey is being chased down by Rigazzoni, who is seemingly attempting to make up for lost time. And they are trying to chase down Prieto. So we had, at one point, a quarter of a second on the entry of Sector 2. And I think that gap is only going to grow now that we come through across here. Yes, 1.1 seconds. Noticeably, Craig Starkey is going to be giving it their absolute all in defense, because Rigazzoni is on a different lap. They do not need to yield. They will yield when it is safe and when they are significantly alongside, but not before. Got that Ferrari blitzing down. You can see Rigazzoni is looking impatient. He does peek down the inside, heading through to the chicane, but wisely chooses not to go for it, in favour of choosing a safer approach. At the front, it looks like we have a little bit of a battle that could heat up with all the all the tussling, and even if they don't necessarily spend much time fighting on the track, the fact that Starkey had to account for Regazzoni being there means that he did lose time, a lot of time to Briecko, and now Peyton could be on the cards to take a P7 spot and put themselves into net P2. We haven't really checked on the leaders because we don't need to. Zaza is 4.5 seconds clear of Brian Anderson, and Brian Anderson themselves is over 10 seconds by this point ahead of Paul Sims. So Sims has managed to get past Krasnov, but he's got a lot of work to do. Eyes are on that Audi for the time being, as there could definitely be some movements in that realm. And I wonder how much recovery we will see from the drivers who did get picked up in the earlier incident. So it looks like in the chat, at least from what I'm seeing, there was an issue in regards to grip. So one of the cars clearly lost grip, lost the rear, and it ended up turning into a little bit of a concertina effect with 3, 4, 5 cars getting involved. Some recovered, some retired. And that is the way that it is in this sport sometimes. Sometimes that is just how things are predestined to go. Jumping a bit further up, we have Adam Rios, who is getting dangerously close to Krasnov. Remember, he's leading the Pro-Am division. He does not need to push any higher than he is. But even look at Priadko. He's coming in closer and is really capitalizing on the gap that they have made up to the other cars. Gregorelli could be one that we might see coming up to lap soon, depending on the pace they're putting down. But Regazzoni is really working and putting in that work to catch up and try and unlap themselves over the course of this race. Rios could be one that might upset that top 4 pro order. I'm just waiting to see who is going to be coming out on top. So yes, to clarify, folks, the reason that we've only got 18 drivers is that we have seen some drop due to personal commitments, and also we started with 21 drivers, but we did see that due to an on-track incident, we had a few drivers who ended up getting caught in a lap 1 collision and quitted out. So the likes of Stuart Pryor, for instance, and Gavin Sullivan were just 2 of the cars that got caught in. Really, it was about 5 or 6 cars, but 3 of them ended up retiring due to either significant damage to where they couldn't finish the race in a good time, or simply just they're not going to go through with that. But while we don't have live stewarding, we will ensure that any stewards reports get picked up and fully scrutinized to the standards that you would expect from Lightspeed Racing. So we have just over 70 minutes to go. And so far, plenty of cards on the table. Plenty of cards are on the table for these drivers. No one is out for the count just yet. Not even likes of Gregorelli or Osintsev, who are multiple laps down. They still could have a shot with this. Everett's going to be heading into the pits alongside Gregorelli, and is technically going to be taking their mandatory pit stop. So we will see whether that plays into a race strategy at all, or whether that is simply just remedial in response to the accident earlier. few drivers are going to be making their pushes. So Sergei Krasnov in that Porsche 911 992 spec RSR GT3 is going to be getting themselves closer and closer to Paul Sims. Paul Sims, despite his best efforts, has only gone and lost time. I'd say the pace of Anderson and Zaza just cannot seemingly be matched right now. They might as well be in a tail of their own race because it's gone from just under 9 seconds to now standing at, as we come across the line here, 11.7 seconds. He is only losing time at this stage. So I've got to say that this race is a little bit slower paced than races that we've seen in the past, and certainly coming off of things like the Road to Grand Finals with SimGrid and VCO. This one is a bit more of a slower burn, despite being a shorter length. Everyone has mostly found themselves out in terms of track position, and everyone has kind of found their balance and their footing. At this point, drivers have settled in. We are 11 laps through, and they are going to be putting in their steady miles in order to rack up those crucial laps, which are going to serve them dividends at the end of the race. Just the more steady, focused distance you can put down now, that means the less volatility and shakiness you have in your position come to the final, say, 10-20 minutes of the racing action. Time ticks by. Krasnov is waiting and is, I gotta say, being very, very patient. But what is that happening in the background? That's Priadko making it past Rios. Rios must have made a mistake because he lost a substantial amount of time. It looks like he might have made a mistake just in the background there, because Priadko is now 4 seconds and coming in relatively hot. I did not think that I would see the day that an amateur driver is making up this kind of timing and coming potentially to trade blows with the pros. 4.1 seconds. They are technically losing time, but we could very much see that change with their current trajectory. Krasnov now is getting into that danger zone. You can see that they are inching closer and eyeing up potential moves that they could make on that Lamborghini. So just watch their movements here. Watch as they go to the right here. Try and keep it as tight to the inside as possible. Get the aero on the right side to rotate the car. Get the slipstream where it counts, but peel out where necessary to get your turn in. That's not just continually looking for those options, building up that pressure. So we are down to 17 drivers now. Austin Seb has made a little bit of a move upwards. Time. They have gained back time, so credit where credit is due. Rigazzoni is going to be up in P13 at the bottom end. Everyone else has had a fairly consistent race. Eyes on the prize here, Krasnov. Watch these two go. They are going to come to blows in the next half a lap or so. You're going to watch the sparks fly between this Lamborghini and this Porsche. They are getting very close to one another. And Krasnov is seeing that it is only a matter of time. They might as well be fighting within themselves because the next position is 14 seconds away and that gap is expanding. Maybe Krasnov could be the one to make up time. Who knows? We can only wait and see. Elsewhere, the field has mostly stabilized. Anderson is 5 seconds behind Zaza. So those two are looking fairly untouchable. And to briefly peek ahead in exactly that. There is absolutely nothing in their way right now. And it does look like we are seeing a very clean race from the two of them. Paul Sims is definitely, though, in that P3 spot, feeling a lot of pressure. They need to perform, and they need to keep their head down while they do it. So we're down to 17 drivers now. Blanchett was another one who I failed to mention earlier who had retired, so my apologies for that. So Krasnov is not going to be as close as he was last lap out. 65 minutes. And we do have a yellow flag coming out. Not sure what that is for. Wonder if there has been a bit of an incident on track somewhere. Yes, there has. That is Craig Starkey. Craig Starkey is off and is out in the pit lane. So he is going to be dropping down massively in terms of time position. I'm really not sure what happened there, but we will see them drop down the field in a very, very big way. Apologies, folks, for the petering commentary. You can probably hear in my voice, but starting to experience a couple of throat issues, so it's going to turn down the pace as the race has settled a little bit more. While my vocal pace is going to be toned down slightly, the pressure is on for Sergei Krasnov to get a move done. We've been keeping an eye on them for a few laps now. And without a doubt, oh, you can see that Starkey is going to be the next one to retire here. That is going to make it 16 out of 22 drivers remaining. So really, Watkins Glen has turned from a race of pace to a race of attrition before long. Pro drivers looking completely in a class of their own right now. The Prieko has made up about a second last we checked on them. And then we see a very large mix of Pro-Am drivers from the top to the bottom. But we should really expect, say, Gregorelli, Osintsev, and to an extent Everett and Regazzoni all being much higher up had the incident not occurred. But the reality is, this is racing. And when you have an incident in racing, sometimes it is unavoidable. Well, you could have certainly a discussion about whether an incident should have happened. We'll see this. This is it. This is... Oh, no, no, no. Not quite. That is going to be Paul Sims shutting the door. Krasnov got extremely close there to making a move. And I'm hearing a couple of reports and murmurings from the chat. So, Starkey, to get a bit more insight onto why the drivers have retired. Starkey had to retire because his throttle got jammed in fully open. So 100% throttle. That's why he was off track. And had no choice but to retire because his throttle had jammed on, jammed open. Looking around for some further context, looks like Gavin Sullivan, one of the drivers who had to retire from that lap 1 collision, he ended up having zero grip and very cold tyres. And then a few other drivers saying that the formation lap was extremely slow, meaning they couldn't get the heat in. And to any one of the drivers, I do encourage getting that stewards report in the absence of live.
They need to get those reports in if they want anything to be adjudicated. You don't file the report, it doesn't get investigated. It's that simple. So drivers have a responsibility in order to get their reports in. And one person I'm going to have a quick peek on, just for curiosity's sake, Nick Regazzoni. Because Nick Regazzoni is actually doing a very good job of unlapping themselves. So they have put down some really good pace, in my opinion, over the past 10 laps, I'd argue. And what this means is that they are slowly pushing through the field. So they have 2 laps to make up, technically. And they have made up a lot of positions. So they're chasing down for P6. And are looking to potentially get even more of a gap and push up ahead of their competition down P13 onwards. In fact, I don't think that Everett is really in contention. He doesn't really have a horse in this race. Richard Cook, though, does have a horse in this race for sure, as he's going to be very close to the back of that Audi. See the sounds of these GT3 cars, absolutely mesmerizing. Here we are, so we come through 30 minutes in, folks. This is your 30-minute timer, your 30-minute pit stop, if you will. And what can we see now? We can see that Claudio Zaza is leading the race very substantially on that front also. 7 seconds ahead of Brian Anderson, who themselves is about 16 seconds ahead of Paul Sims. Sergei Krasnov was staging a bit of a challenge against that for the Lamborghinis and eventually the Ferraris, trying to make up some good pace, but he hasn't been able to get past Paul Sims just yet. Priadko is an amateur, really punching above their weight, so not only being P1 in their respective class, but completely outclassing all other Pro-Am drivers on the track. I wonder if we're going to see a little bit of adjustment with just how well they've done here in this outing here at Watkins Glen. We've got them looking down the field. We've got James Payton, Richard Cook, who we're on board with right now, having a little bit of a tussle, or at least Cook is trying to keep the pace close, but looks like he is also not too dissimilar to Priadko and Krasnov, falling away when things are starting to get tight and starting to get good. And you have Robert Homer in P9, Roger Discat, and then the bottom 5, as we are now down to 15 drivers. 15 out of 22, folks. 15 out of 22. Bottom 5, yeah, we have Gabbett, Regazzoni, Everett, Cameron, and Usitsev. So the grid has significantly thinned out. But this just means for those who have chosen to stick in with the race, positions are all the more valuable. It's crazy to think. I have not been commentating in the Assetto Corsa Competizione scene for as long, but I have to say this is the highest amount of retirements in a single race that I have seen. I am, of course, grateful that that bar is not much higher, but that is a very substantial amount of drivers who are out. So Gregorelli is going to be another one off the field. Resigning themselves to the set of DNFers. With 56 minutes to go, looks like a long race ahead. Andrew Priadko. This is looking like an absolute hero story, however, as they are also putting down what looks to be a really good one-lap pace. So over the course of this run, we will see that they are averaging anywhere from high 45s to low 46s, which is a pretty good pace standard, going very wide through the first corner. So track limits might be a little bit of a concern there in Priadko's case. But we are a third of the way through now. This is the crucial stage of the race, folks, for a single reason. And that reason is that we are going to be very soon coming up to the pit stop window. Roger Everett has already taken their mandatory pit stop, the only driver on track to do so. But that could have been in response to the earlier situation on track. So really, all of these drivers could immensely vary their strategic outlook by heading into the pits, either sooner or later. The undercut could be a viable option because you have the opportunity to ensure your tyres and your car are running optimally with your setup and catch up to the other drivers. Then when they normally go on a lap, when they have a pit stop a few laps after you, you will already be warmed up. So the pace difference will be a few seconds. And forgive me for employing a little bit of Formula 1 logic to this one. But the undercut tends to be a lot more powerful in terms of tyre strategy than the overcut. At least we don't have anything like rain coming in to sour the bridge. You can see on the weather monitor, it is a clear night ahead of us. 16-degree track temperature, 0 wind or crosswind. So this is about as consistent, if a little slippery, this is about as consistent a track experience as you are going to get at night. The only thing drivers could really ask for here is a bit more tyre temperature and a bit more track surface temp. So that way it requires a lot less work to get the tyres into that optimal operating window. We're back on board with Sergei Krasnov as they, once again, according to our timing tower, we're looking to be drawing very close to the Lamborghini of Paul Sims, heading into lap 21, or I believe 22. Yes, 22 we'll be heading into here. Keep an eye on these two with great interest as Krasnov is keeping that pressure firm and Paul Sims has done a brilliant job of keeping their head down and keeping cool while a assailant continuously and ruthlessly knocks on the door, waiting for any opportunity to get by. Notice how Krasnov is trying to stay out of the slipstream of Paul whenever he can, especially through corners, because he doesn't want to lose any aerodynamic efficiency through the dirty air. Wings and surfaces, they generate a lot of vortexes, a lot of vortices. They generate a lot of high and low pressure zones around the car in order to manipulate the air into giving you extra grip, doing what you want it to do. The side effect is the trail you leave behind. And for the car behind, whose aerodynamics, like yours, are made for what's called laminar flow, where your car expects uniform streams of air, not anything affected by vortexes or being kicked out to the side or kicked upwards, and high pressure there, low pressure there. that just disturbs and unsettles your aerodynamics. It makes them unpredictable. So Krasnov, in fact, if we switch over to the bonnet cam for this next lap, we'll watch just how much he's working to get the slipstream on the straights, but avoid being directly behind when it comes to the corners, unless absolutely necessary for a good line. See right there, a little bit wider on the right-hander before kinking it to the left and a little bit deeper on the left. Small examples that add up. As they get the car rotated nice and cleanly. And switching onto the helicopter, let's try and get a little bit of a larger scope of action. See the Krasnov, despite his best efforts, seems to be stuck in a little bit of a middle window. He's not particularly gaining, he's not particularly losing either. Although saying that, he did make a bit of a mistake coming into this mild straight here over the crest. Did take a little bit more grass than he was expecting to. So he is down to over half a second now. You can see that Gabbett and Richard Cook have taken their pit stops as of now. So they have completed their mandatories. They've got their fuel and tyres. And now we will see drivers start to make those judgment calls. Both of them going very deep into the curve, but making sure they carry as much speed as humanly possible. So Krasnov got a slightly better first sector. You can see him really pushing, trying to close in. Fully making it there. As you can see, James Payton is going to be the next driver in the Audi to head into the pit lane. Krasnov getting very close. They have to yield in the apex of the corner. They lose a lot of time there. You can see the massive gap opening up almost immediately once they reach the middle apex. Will tell for this fated Porsche driver. And jumping further up, let's have a look at Claudio Zaza, of course, being the one to set the cadence of the race. Are they going to be heading into the pits? Yes, they are. A little bit of a crossover of the yellow line, but they are going to be jumping in, and we're going to see if anyone is going to follow suit with them here. Brian Anderson is also going to be jumping into the pits. Is Paul Sims down in P3. Remember, once the leader goes in, they effectively control the flow of the race. So will we see Paul Sims also be coming in? No! The Lamborghini is going to stay out for another lap, as is Sergei Krasnov, continuing to fight for those top spots. So Anderson and Zaza with a little bit of an undercut in terms of overall strategy, with Rios and Everett once again heading into the pit. So Everett did have a pit earlier in response to the incident. They're going in again to make sure they have all the fuel and tyres they need to complete this race. A few drivers to watch and keep our eyes on. Robert Holmes kind of found himself in a little bit of his own space. He doesn't have anything to worry about, but he will very soon, as that is going to be a Mr. Anderson, Mr. Zaza, coming in very hot very shortly. Timing tower just taking a few minutes to catch up. Zaza just a couple of seconds behind to see there. Now this is where we will see the difference between a pro driver and a Pro-Am driver, but one of them being on cold tyres, fresh out of the pits, and the other having plenty of push and wear, for that matter, on them by now. So you can see that Ferrari is already catching up, making its presence very known to the Porsche here. Getting dangerously close. Just the amount of pace that they've been able to extract immediately in comparison to the cars currently out on track. Zaza is looking like an absolute threat. A real threat right now, as we are now at the halfway point of the race. It is coming up to midnight on in-game time and in UK time as well. I'm tired. And this is where everyone basically should be looking at making sure they are in the pits. They have pitted. Krasnov and Predko is going to see themselves into the pits now, along with Robert Homer, who is going to yield in favour of them themselves going into the pits, as we now see the order starting to establish and balance out. So yeah, John Gabbett, one who's already taken their stop, but is running solely in their own space down in P12. Homer, Predko, Krasnov all out there. Paul Sims, interestingly, has made the difficult choice to continue. For whatever reason, Claudio Zaza has managed to make up 5 more seconds on Brian Anderson. Time will tell what we make of this one. And oh, what just happened there for John Gabbett? We were luckily on the helicam, but they look to be seriously struggling through those couple chicanes, and even coming out into the long right-hander, taking it very wide, going on the marbles. Yeah, Paul Sims, our leader of the race, is now heading into the pits. Where are they going to come out, however? That is a crucial question. Where will they come out in this race? Let's take a look at the timetable, folks, and let's see who is where. So you can see the lap counter in a lot more detail here and get a perspective on just how far the gap has gone. The 22 laps for Everett, for instance, compared to the 26 of Paul Sims, soon to be 27, as Paul Sims has headed into the pit lane. Or is coming out of the pit lane, sorry, my mistake there. Coming out of the pit lane, and now is going to be seeing themselves drop down, with Claudio Zaza once again usurping P1 position. Paul Sims could be in a good position to come out. Brian Anderson is going to sort themselves into P2. Paul Sims coming out on track once again in P3. Just how far have they got away from Krasnov, though? That's the question. And it looks like they have got a crucial couple of seconds on the Porsche. There you go, Paul Sims going across the timing gate now, 17 seconds behind. How far is Krasnov? 2.7 seconds. So tyre strategy has certainly worked out in the Lamborghini's favour. Only drivers yet to take a mandatory pit stop by this stage are Roger Dismukes, Nick Regazzoni. John Gabbett has already taken a stop, but seems to be chasing down. I believe that's Brian Anderson, so a little bit of entertainment there. But we have, looking around, we have Kuro Osintsev. We have Robert Everett living in the pits, remaining in the pits for several laps now. Just not long came out the pits. Dismukes with a very shiny Ferrari livery, I do have to say. Very shiny indeed. Just because this is going to be all the way up, though, in P7. Usually we've seen them at the bottom of the field, so it is awesome to see. They are now in P7. They're really bringing that fight that a lot of us knew they already had. We just needed a little bit of unlocking. Awesome stuff to see. Since they're continuing that good fight as well, continuing to soldier on despite being multiple laps behind. They fight the good fight. They drive the good drive. Scott Cameron just a little bit further. They are a lap ahead, technically, of the compatriot of Osinsev. They too have to get into the pit lane, but they're choosing not to go in this lap. So really extending this first stint. Quite aggressively, might I add. Nick Rigazzoni is going to be heading into the pits now. So the only drivers who will have yet to take pit stops are in fact going to be McLarens. Looks like Priagco has got very close to Adam Rios. And we could see that even though these two have traded places over the course of this pit period, we might see the positions be traded right back. The clocks are ticking. 40 minutes. Half an hour left on the pit window. So Cameron and Osinsev are going to have to think about soon making that call. You do not want to be running out near towards the end, the sharp end of things, because that would have just been inefficient on your tyre life. And you wouldn't be extracting the maximum pace that you could out of 2 sets of tyres. Looks like we might even see a little bit of a backup with some traffic coming in. Priagco looking for a move on Rios. Getting very, very spicy down here in the battle for P5. I believe that is Rigazzoni just up ahead there. So not really a horse in this race. See, Priagco is very, very anxious to try and get round, even to the point where they go on the grass and lose a significant amount of pace. Flashing the lights, trying to get attention, trying to build pressure. I'd say even what feels like a little bit of a taunt at times. I don't know, any drivers in chat, let me know on this. Do you use the flashing of the lights as a taunt? Trying to goad them into a race. See Priagco with a very big extend. They're coming across into lap 30. Priagco is very eager. You can see how they driving super aggressively in these early stages of this battle. Even now, they're going super aggressive, just trying to get the time. This is where they grew and moved last lap and it didn't materialise. They're going to do it here. They're certainly going to be getting close. They're certainly going to try. Back on board with the helicopter. You see this three-way stack, and this could get very, very difficult for Adam Rios very, very quickly. If they don't sufficiently get past the back marker in time, and that marker being Nick Regazzoni, if they don't get past him in time, they could be in serious trouble. Because Adam Rios is under threat. that threat, as you can see from, even though not being alongside, still looking to pitch a move. You can see how aggressive the competition is. And oh, that nearly could have been very dangerous there. As that is going to be Priagco almost making it so they had to contact on the rear flank of that McLaren. Luckily, Rios gives the space and what is necessary. Ooh, a little bit of a rearward snap. I think their confidence got a bit shaken by that move. That's going to be Priagco up into P5 of this race here. So Rios is going to be demoted to P6. And 2.5 seconds stands between Priagco and Krasnov. So it begs the question of whether Priagco is going to stay where they are, or if they're going to even make a bid catching up to the pros. There's such a diverse field, kind of commands the class system in order to keep things together. We're seeing here that sometimes you get that talent in a class and in a position you didn't expect. This is a very standout position so far for Andrew Priagco. Folks, jumping on with everything else. You see, Scott Cameron is going to be our penultimate driver to head into the pits, leaving just Austin Sev left, who is yet to make their mandatory stop. And we're on board with Anderson here, just because they are in a completely unique space, being so far away from Paul Sims and any credible threat. Also being so far away from any chance at taking the lead. So 15 seconds and what looks to be growing between himself and Claudio Zaza. It's just crossed the midnight point in the race. 15.5 seconds. 15 degrees. The darkness of Watkins Glen is calling. The clock is certainly ticking with these drivers. They're going to be feeling it, as are all of you in the audience. They're going to start thinking about where they want to be in this last 30 minutes, in this last section of racing. Looking at the fastest lap time, so 1:44.445 coming from Zaza is a brilliant job in terms of keeping pace. Where we've seen a lot of drivers be in the 55s, 56s, Zaza's consistently in the 45, 46s. My mistake. We are seeing that Zaza is consistently in the low 45s, maybe even the 44s on occasion. So we're talking about anywhere from 2/3 to a full second per lap ahead of their competition. And that I find very, very impressive. I'm going to hop down the field and take a little bit of a roll call with how we currently sit. So Scott Cameron is one that has kind of fallen by the wayside, but has otherwise done very well. P13, WTS Racing, seems to be keeping good consistent pace. And even if they are laps down, they've shown that they can do a good race and still drive it where it counts and in a sportsman-like fashion. It's unfortunate that we're going to see Robert Everett in the pit, and Austin Sev is going to be heading into the pits now, making it so that officially every driver has satisfied the additional condition of the race. That condition Being mandatory fuel and tyres. They are into the pit lane. Get himself refreshed. Get himself refueled. Get himself back on this track. Everyone by this stage has just formed in their own space. Except for Sergei Krasnov and Andrew Prieko. So we will hop on board with the Porsche and see what a defending lap looks like from his perspective. He's not under immediate pressure as we come through to the final 30 minutes of the race. Time is ticking. Krasnov has got to be putting good laps. Laps in a row as well. Consistency is such a major factor in these leagues that you can't help but wonder how much just one mistake will cost in terms of time. The answer, a lot of time. A single mistake could run you back anywhere from a couple tenths if you catch it to multiple seconds on the more severe ones, to putting you straight in last, to even getting you retired from the race. Case in point, some of the drivers that we had earlier, even if they technically could have continued, it wasn't seen as viable, and so made the simple choice of not to. I would like to see some hard-fought, hard-won racing. Isn't always the case meant to be. Sometimes it's better as a driver just to save your energy for the weekends to come, the weekends to follow. Krasnov is in a very difficult situation though right now, as he's stuck behind John Gabbert. Every corner that he's stuck behind John Gabbert, you've got Prieko getting closer, and he's right within striking distance now of that Porsche. How aggressive is he going to be going for the move? He is going to be throwing the nose in, and through the final corner of Watkins Glen, they're going to be drag racing down the start-finish straight, and this is it. This is where Prieko could be making his move, and yes, I believe it could be done, and that is going to be, I can't believe it, Prieko is going to be breaking the sequence of pro drivers and putting themselves into P4 of this race. Easily P1 in their class. But this has just sealed the deal in terms of their prowess as a driver. We do not see this every day. Certainly do not see this every day. Other news, folks, definitely be sure to join us, because tomorrow we are going to be having the next round. Oh, big wobble there from Krasnov. Krasnov's in the wall. He hit the wall into the grass as well. That could put him in the crosshairs of Adam Rios too. The momentum and the race has fallen apart for Sergei Krasnov. What could have been a podium fighting against Paul Sims has now turned into a tumble. Not sure if it's talent, confidence, or patience, but either way, something has run out of there. Take our roll call throughout this event so far, folks. Claudio Zaza currently in the lead of the race. Brian Anderson in P2, Paul Sims in P3, Andrew Prieko in P4, Sergei Krasnov in P5, having recovered Adam Rios in P6, Richard Cook in P7. That's your top half of the grid anyway. And then we have James Payton, Robert Homer, Roger Diswickes, Nick Riccazzoni, John Gabbert, followed by Scott Cameron, Kirill Osinsev, and Roger Everett in the pits. So this is effectively 14 racers out of 22 starters. Crazy thing to think about. Looking forward to the rest of this season, folks. So those of you who've checked out on our sim grid page, and definitely be sure to do so, what track are you looking forward to most as we head into the later stages of the season? Of course, we've got the Hungaroring next round. We'll talk about that when we get there. Then we've also got Monza, Bathurst, and then finally the Nürburgring GP circuit. But let us know what track you are the most excited for in the coming tracks of the season. I personally absolutely love the Hungaroring. I think that it's a very dynamic track. Oh, big wobble there from Adam Rios. I think it is an extremely dynamic track. I think that it is one that can produce a lot of great racing action in all categories of motorsport. And we will, of course, see when our drivers get there how much of a battle they want to be doing. It will be back to 60 minutes, just as the information, folks. We'll be back to 60 minutes. So you can expect a fairly standard race length. Things are indeed happening. That's going to be coming across. We'll see a bit of the time gaps as they're coming through. So 5 seconds behind Krasnov. And Ryadko is 2.3 seconds ahead of Krasnov themselves and 3 seconds away from Paul Sims. So this amateur driver could even make a move on the Lamborghini, because they are technically closing on them. 2.6 seconds now compared to last sector. Just waiting for the action to unfold. This is the setup phase. It's almost like a chess game. I'd love to talk to one of these guys at some point in terms of how they formulate their race strategy, how they formulate the timings for going into the pits. I would like to see what the plan is, because a lot of drivers, they often play the race what we call reactively. They don't always go for the runs on the very predefined strategies. They go for sometimes being a lot more reactive, a lot more responding to drivers around them, and then necessarily going in with a predefined plan. See there, that is going to be a Ferrari that is in the way of Priadko and their attack. That is going to be Roger Dismiquez. I'm Going to see how is Priadko going to navigate this challenge as you've got the Ferrari right where it doesn't want him to be. He's trying to get around. He's looking around the outside and having to take a much wider line. Dismukes is going to peel to the inside and allow the Mercedes to get through. But at what time loss? It was a bigger time loss for Paul Sims as they're now within a second and striking distance for the Mercedes AMG. 20 minutes to go now, folks. Just over 20 minutes to go. This is where it could all come to fruition. For the little amateur that could. Watch him drawing closer and closer, slowly and slowly. Watch how aggressive he is. Look at the movement of the wheel. See how aggressive they're going with the steering. Just in order to get any semblance of gap be closed. Themselves and their key opponent here. A little bit shaky through the first corner. I wonder how Paul Sims is feeling because he's had quite the bunch of assailants over the course of this race. He's, of course, had Krasnov, who gave him a good run for his money for about 10 minutes of race duration. And then we also now have Priadko, which really shouldn't be a threat, but is seemingly going to be one with how close they have now drawn. One thing we do know for now is that drivers are locked in their strategies and they're set in their ways. To see anyone go into the pits at this stage means that something has either gone terribly wrong or there has been a mistake made. Because at the 10-minute mark, the pit window will officially close. And drivers will be left to run whatever they brung till the end. You see a massive gaggle of cars just a bit further back. The eyes right now are firmly trained around the field. You can see that Dismukes could potentially even eye up a move on Regazzoni. Regazzoni has shown really good pace throughout this whole ordeal, to the point where they have actually done a fairly good job of seemingly unlapping themselves. Dismukes is making much in the realm of headway against Regazzoni. This Regazzoni is now going to be on the hunt, on the chase down even, and oh, that's Paul Sims who's losing the car! He's lost the car coming through, I believe that's turn 6. And that is going to be Sims completely out for the count and into the pit lane where they are likely going to retire. So, if anything that we've seen is that usually an incident like that does spell a death knell for your race efforts. Sims is going to jump into the pits there. I'm not sure what happened. We just jump over and we see that Krasnov is nowhere to be seen. We see that Priadko is up into P3. We see that Sims is completely out of the running. I wonder if we'll see any stewards chime in on that. So far, yeah, Sims is going to be jumping into the pit lane. Are they going to be coming out, though? That's the question and the hope. We don't want to make it 14 out of 22. Or 13, really. Because that would be almost just over 60% driver finish rate, which is really not where we want to be. We're just on board with Zaza with our race leader for the minute, as they have been putting in Herculean laps and really doing a great job of committing the pace to the track. So your Sims now down in 9th. Is Sims going to be coming out the pits? I do hope that Sims is going to be coming out the pits. I beg, please say he is. We can't be dealing with more DNFs, my man. Find the power, find the strength. Basically, in all of this, it does mean that an amateur driver is going to be not just net P3 or P2, P1. They're going to be net P1 and they're going to be P3 on the track, on the books. That is insane. We just do not see this at this level. I think that might be a death blow for Paul Sims' race there. And we will be seeing ourselves finishing with only 13 cars on track. Unfortunately, this means that there's not really much in the way of on-track battles either. The drivers have very much, for the most part, balanced themselves out. With no real proximity to another car on your lap. So we're on board with Zaza here. Zaza's about to overtake a back marker of Robert Homer. Blue flag's being waved. 13 minutes to go. Let's watch. Let's wait and see. There we go. Very smooth overtake there from Zaza. As the blue flags do their job. I honestly have to say, we had a pretty dang eventful race. Oh, but look! But look, folks! Look who is back out on track. It's none other than Paul Sims. He's going to keep it going. And he's going to continue to fight. I salute you, good sir. You are making that choice to continue to push and fight. Even when it very easily could have been a retirement and leaving of the session. You stick to your guns and you keep going. That is a quality driver right there. That is the evidence of a quality driver. So let's see what you can do from P12, Paul. I'm sure plenty of people who will watch this will believe in you. Myself included. You can really make a bit of a push. Could even make himself become a threat, depending on how much time he can make up. He could become a threat to John Gabbert. Maybe assert himself into P11. mix of the field as well. We have got James Payton, who's trying to get around Osinsev in the 720S there. Just trying to get around. Blue flags are probably going to come in a minute. Did my eyes deceive me, or did I just see a fleck of rain, even though nothing's coming up on the monitor? It's full set to see sunny. Saw a random particle effect come across the screen, might have been. I'll say, this is a fairly competitive track. Even when you have back markers, blue flaggers, we've still seen incidents, we've still seen people really push. And now we are seeing James Payton as we cross the final 10-minute mark. The pit window officially closing. No more pit stops after this point. Paul Sims is going to be going back in the pits though at the very last moment. Are they going to be coming back out? I do hope that they come back out. Maybe it's just giving it another try before deciding, nope, the damage is too fatal, can't do this. I'll say that R8 GT3 car sounds so beautiful. It's a shame we don't see more diversity in the car choices around the field, because to hear these cars and their roaring engines reverberate against each other in a cacophony of automotive perfection would truly be a sight and a sound to see. We are final few minutes now, folks. Drivers are certainly looking hungry for those final moves and final pushes where they can get them. Let's look around the field and see what we have here. So, looking a bit further up, we can see Radko is in a very comfortable position. They have 8 seconds against Krasnov and 14 seconds behind Anderson. So provided they stick themselves in a comfortable spot and they stick to their guns, they could see themselves winning in the amateur division. The winner of the Pro-Am division so far, it looks like it could be none other than Adam Rios, because Richard Cook is so far behind. He's 13 seconds. That is not a time that you can just make up over the course of a few minutes of racing. Well, not unheard of. It does rely on a lot of additional circumstances to play perfectly into your favour. Unfortunately, Paul Sims is going to be looking like they are staying in the pit lane for the rest of this session, which will make it 13 out of 22 drivers, or about 16%. So yes, 59%. Doing a little bit of maths in my head there, it's about 59%. And that will be very low finish rate for drivers in the league racing. It's not position. Usually you want to be seeing much higher, the 80s, the 90s. But alas, we must deal with what has been dealt, and what has been dealt was a very early collision that resulted in a lot of players having to walk it back to the paddock. and taking the bus to Park Ferme, rather than being able to drive their lovely GT3 car anymore. Doing our final 5 minutes of this race here. To recap how this race went, we had a fairly eventful one, especially in the first couple of laps. We saw a few training places around the field, and we saw a big incident collect a lot of cars. So Gregory, Blanchette, Sullivan, just to name a few drivers who have unfortunately retired this session. Craig Starkey got his throttle jammed on and had to retire about 30 minutes ago. We are seeing here that a few drivers have had the quietest race of all time. So, for instance, Claudia Zaza, they have been pushing not to hold position because they've got that very easily. They are doing it because they have such a strong lead on the field. And we might even see him get into 50 laps. I should say Claudia Zaza, 50 laps on the 90 minutes of Watkins Glen here at Lightspeed and here at Twilight Season 2. That is going to be cleanly past John Gabbert with zero issues to speak of. 31 seconds away from Brian Anderson. By the time he gets to set a time, he's going to be immediately a sector down again, and the timing tower just disappears. It's crazy how well and how cleanly this race has gone with the Zaza Racing team. To be our final lap now, folks. Effectively, this is going to be what looks to be the final complete lap of the race before the checkered flag will fall on lap 51. And we're going to spend it aboard with none other than our race leader, Claudia Zaza, who has had, if I might say, the perfect weekend. They got the fastest time in free practice. They got the fastest time in qualifying with a good margin, over a 10th. And they got, by far, the lead of the race and potentially the win of the race. I'm not going to say affirmative yet. They could have an accident and could put themselves out of contention, but 33 seconds of time is not to be taken with lightly. It's not to be trifled with. So yeah, 32 seconds. Not to be lightly taken. But if it was ever possible to detect and have a Grand Slam for these ACC events, Zaza would be having the Watkins Glen Grand Slam in a heartbeat after such a domineering performance they put on tonight. So there you go, you hear that coming over the radio. This is going to be the final lap of the race, because by the time that Salazar comes around the track once again, it is going to be out of time. And the checker flag will officially fall. And yet still, despite having over 32 seconds of advantage, Salazar is going to be giving it their absolute all, pushing with their absolute 110%, all their might. To ensure that they to themselves have not just had a brilliant race, but they have had the best possible race for themselves. As a driver, you often play for keeps, you play to improve, but then you play for pride. This is one of those situations where Salazar could let off. He's not going to, because he's a competitive driver. He has that competitive spirit and that refusal to give anything less than your absolute best, even when it doesn't necessarily require it. Still put on your absolute A game. You put your best foot forward no matter what. And the best foot forward Claudio Salazar has done as we come through the final corner to the checkered flag. And a happy little wiggle away. That is Claudio Salazar with a very Beyblade-esque finish, completing the race with 51 laps. With 1 lap more than I actually predicted. Great job there from that Ferrari. And more drivers are going to be coming through soon. So Robert Home across the line. Jack Gabbett, Scott Cameron crossing the line. And then you have more of them coming through the field. Now Brian Anderson is going to make their way across the line. 33.5 seconds later. And then down the rest of the field, we've got Andrew Greco. An amazing job. 10 seconds behind Brian Anderson. And a few more drivers are going to see themselves coming through now. But that is it, folks. That is your race done. With a couple more cars just coming through now. Krasnov across the line. Rios across the line. Regazzoni across the line in P9. Great recovery there from him. Dispikes. Also, Richard Cook in the AMG coming through P6. Ostintsev and Peyton are the last cars on track. You can see everyone else is now filing out. What a race that was, folks. We are done. And you can see just a few of the names that didn't make it to the end. So we had Sims and Everett, who finished in the pit lane multiple laps behind. Craig Starkey had to retire early with the throttle issue. And then you had Greg Relic, Blanchett, Sullivan, Gallimini. And that is just to name a couple. But that is it, folks. That is it, and this is the race over. So thank you for joining us tonight. You've been an amazing audience, as always. Next time, we look forward to the beautiful Hungaroring, one of my favourite tracks personally, and I will not keep you guys any longer. Because it has gone midnight in my local time, and I have to be up bright and early for a very, very special event tomorrow. Take good care of yourselves. Make sure you join us either in the Discord, check out SimGrid, or make sure that you tune in about 9 to 10 hours time, because we are going to be having an amazing time. And that amazing time is going to be in the form of the Road to the Grand Finals. None other than that prestigious event in collaboration with SimGrid and with VCO. It's going to be absolutely glorious. And it is going to be a really, really good race to look forward to. So definitely have it on your calendar that we are headed to Bathurst. We'll see you next time. Take care, folks. I'll be alongside Tony Maynard, the legend himself, and you won't want to miss it.